Good afternoon and welcome to the Office of Resilience and Sustainability's 24 to 2028 Capital Improvement Plan public hearing. City Planning conducts these hearings with departments and agencies at the beginning of the capital budget planning process every year in order to give the public an opportunity to comment and have access to agencies' capital requests for the upcoming 5 years. So what we have asked all of the agencies to do is to go through the items that you submitted for funding, give a brief description of each, and how that kind of fits within I guess your 5-year plan for facility upgrades or new construction, whatever you may have requested, and how that delivers your missions. If we could start with a round of introductions, I'm Larry Massey, Deputy Director of State and City Planning.
Vince Smith, Director of Capital Projects.
Sean Lewis, Project Manager, Capital Projects. Greg Nichols, Deputy Chief Resilience Officer, Office of Resilience and Sustainability.
Sharon Herbalist, I'm the Environmental Affairs Administrator for the Office of Resilience and Sustainability.
Dan Jotris, Infrastructure Projects Administrator for the Office of Resilience and Sustainability.
Okay. I'll turn it over to you.
Floor is ours. Good afternoon, everybody. So we, Office of Resilience and Sustainability, which is the successor agency to the Mayor's Office of Coastal Environmental Affairs, has submitted 2 requests in the capital budget for 2024 through 2028. The first is a investment in the city's bike share infrastructure. Our office manages a multi-year CBA with the city's operator, Blue Crew, which is a nonprofit here in the city. And as most folks who live here know, you can pick up a bike at one of those stations and ride within the city's the bike share network to another station for a fee. Most bike share networks across the city have been dependent on corporate sponsorships that often will lead to some risk of the bike share systems becoming insolvent down the road if that corporate sponsorship decides to pull out. So one way that we're trying to get more actively involved is to have the city take a more active role in some of the infrastructure that would be required for the bike share system. So this request is for the city to purchase and own the 90 new 8 bike share racks to help both infill the existing operating footprint of the bike share system, which is primarily uptown, mid-city, CBD, Marigny, and the Bywater, and then it would also allow for a planned expansion of that bike share system in the coming years. There, within the CEA, there are some the city has with the Blue Crew. There are some metrics around wanting to have an equitable bike share system that means targeting neighborhoods that might meet LMI requirements. And so, in any planned expansion, we'd want to balance, where there would be the potential for more revenue with also the equity concerns. And so, I think one we've discussed with Blue Crew is expanding to include both the Central City neighborhood as well as some more portions of uptown as an initial part of that. And so this request would help obviously cover some of Blue Crew's expenses. We would own them, but I think the maintenance of them would be passed on to the Blue Crew in an agreement. So I think it benefits the city in terms of they already know how to own and operate it or to maintain these systems. But it would help their bottom line in terms of making a more sustainable investment. It is a turnkey installation. These are all designed, the stations that folks see out on the street are designed similarly, so we wouldn't need any sort of architecture and engineering firm. It could be done in 1 year, probably actually even less than that. So, Dan, did I miss anything?
I would just say, in addition to it supporting the efforts of the bike share CEA, it's also consistent with elements of the city's master plan, as well as the new update to the climate action plan specifically highlights the expansion of the bike share system as one of the goals of the city or one of the objectives to meet the goals of the climate action plan.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, the current system has around 900 e-bikes in it. The Blue Crew has recently purchased a large, about 300 more additional bikes within the last 6 months. Obviously, you need a place to park those bikes, so additional stations to get to our goal is, I think, 2,000 by 2020, 2,000 e-bikes by 2025. We wrote in the climate action plan.
How many stations do we have in use right now?
There's approximately 100 that are the branded blue ones. There are then maybe about a dozen other locations that are just a geofenced virtual station. Several of those are in the French Quarter as part of the agreement that was made in 2017 to not put Blue Crew branded stations in the French Quarter to try to ease people's visual sensibilities.
Have the locations already been identified?
So, in previous iterations of the bike share network, as some folks might know, it used to be run by Uber, and then it was bought out by Sobi. Did I do that right? Other direction. Sobi, then Uber, and then it failed right when the pandemic started, and that's when the nonprofit model started. There was some identification of some of the stations in the Uptown network that had already been ID'd and I believe permitted, correct?
Yeah, permits that were issued before the previous iteration of the system folded. So somewhere about 24 permits that were issued that were not utilized at the time.
So the short answer is some of them probably would be the same stations that were permitted previously, and some would be newer.
You know, it would be great if there was, you know, some kind of master plan, just something showing, okay, here's what we have now, and, you know, here's the expansion plan.
We were just talking about this, actually. So there was a feasibility study done through RPC, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Dan did the report when he was at RPC, actually. Before bike share launched in 2017, and obviously some of those metrics and research are a little bit outdated now, and so our office actually just recently applied to the Greater New Orleans Foundation 100-Year Challenge to do some further studying of kind of what the future iterations of bike share in the city might be. So we're looking for funding to do exactly what you just talked about.
How much would that cost?
Grant was $100,000, but I don't know if all of it was dedicated towards.
Yeah, we basically, the confines of that grant were $100,000. So we took the approach of 95% of that would go towards the study itself, hiring a consulting firm to assist, and then 5% towards the grant administration.
You know, when I was headed towards to the meeting yesterday evening, I turned off of, I guess that's Eureka Castle. You know how you turn to get on the interstate, and right at the light when you get up on the interstate, you know, there were some homeless camps, and one of them they kind of had a protective barrier, and they had one of the blue bicycle frames, and they were using it as part of their fencing. What's how do they manage that? How do they maintain, you know, identify locations for the bikes? What happens in that situation? Are bikes insured? Do you know?
Yeah, so Blue Crew has the ability to track. Obviously, there's some internet capability in each of the bikes that allows them to track where the location of the bikes. Unfortunately, theft is a problem in New Orleans, and they do go missing from time to time. They make, if they can find it through the geofencing in the location, they'll make an attempt to try and find it. But sometimes they're within people's houses or in a backyard, and Blue Crew isn't going to go and cross into private property.
Maybe don't you have to put some kind of a credit card in? How does that work? Okay, it's in the rack.
Yep.
And
Yeah, to initiate a ride, you use the Blue Crew app on the phone, and you have to have you create an account. You can either access it through a monthly membership or pay as you go single rides.
yeah. So does the rack lock the bikes? You know, is there a security mechanism in the rack?
it's not on the rack itself. So the system, New Orleans bike share kind of started in the era of bike share systems where they were shifting towards more of a smart bike dumb rack model to lower the capital cost of the rack. So all the interaction between the user and the system is with the bike itself. So the locking mechanism is on the bike, and the rack is, like I said, a dumb rack. It's essentially a chunk of metal that you just secure the bike to.
So what happens with the bike? Like you run out of time. Does it lock up?
No. So if you're a member, membership includes 60 minutes per day of included ride time. If you exceed 60 minutes, then you start incurring additional fees at a per minute rate.
Okay.
If you're a single trip pay as you go user, there's that minute rate that you're incurring. So it's all based on the length of time that you're using it as to what the cost ends up being.
Okay.
And then if you lock outside of one of the stations at the end of your trip, you pay an additional service fee for having ended outside of the station.
Okay.
But thanks for letting us know about that, Mike. We'll contact.
Yeah, tell them
get
to
a
go by, get on go to Reefer Castle, make the left, and go up on the interstate. There it is.
We'll get it back home.
Okay.
Any other questions about? So our second request is what's called gutter buddies, gutter bin installations. So our office, working with Public Works, is asking for approximately $500,000 for a one-time installation, basically pilot, of identifying 100 catch basins in each council district to install these gutter bins, which are essentially mesh bags that are installed within the catch basins, and they would catch debris that would flow into the catch basins and prevent those catch basins from being clogged. I'll let Sharon talk about this a little bit more, but it's my understanding that there's one designer who's invented this, has modeled what it would look like for our particular, for New Orleans catch basins, and they would design it for the type of catch basins that we have here.
Yeah, they've actually already done it.
Go for it.
Yeah, they've already established it. It's like a special kind of mesh. He's a mechanical engineer. He's created this mesh, which fits perfectly inside, and they can hold up to 300 pounds of trash. And it's something that can either be like it's strong enough to withstand a vacuum truck. So if we needed to have the vacuum truck pull out whatever debris was inside, we could do that, or we could also lift the lid and pull it out if we wanted to measure how much weight it can hold, but it'll expand the capacity. Like this material stretches like the whole length of the catch basin, but we can collect up to 300 pounds, and they've had a lot of success in other cities. And they do a lot of custom work. Actually, right now they're working on with some zoos, and I think the zoo that he's working on right now is actually in Colorado. They're trying to address how do they do the drainage for the elephants. And elephants are really smart, so they're trying to figure out how to lock the mechanism so that the elephant can't open the top of the bin, but to make sure there's drainage that still goes through. So there's all sorts of different uses. So it's pretty exciting. I've been trying to. We wrote a grant to try to install gutter bins along MLK from Chabatulas to Claiborne a couple years ago, and it wasn't funded. But I've been trying to get this technology in the city for quite a while. There's a great opportunity to prevent some, just debris and litter from getting into the lake by having this technology in place. And it's pretty simple, but it's really effective.
So they've already designed a prototype for
For New Orleans, yeah. And we also have, it would be limited to, we have multiple different types of catch basins. Like we have the vertical tops, and then we have the ones that have the slots and they're flat. So he can, the designer we can have either different kinds, or we can prioritize based on where the vertical ones are. We can prioritize not only going in different neighborhoods, but we can prioritize areas that we know have issues with a lot of debris. If we could, but right now what we're imagining, or what the plan would be, for us to place 100 in each council district.
Do you have a cut sheet or something?
Yeah, we have plans.
I think you mentioned this, but we obviously, we in each council district, we kind of targeting where using 311 requests and known flooding events where we kind of have had some of the worst backups of our catch basins in the city. And if funded, this obviously could down the road fund a much, if they're successful, fund a much more expansive campaign to put this type of technology in all the city's catch basins. And obviously it's going to help improve water quality in the city. What gets caught up there doesn't go into the lake and other water systems. Helps us meet our requirements that we have with our MS4 permit under the Clean Water Act. So good for both the city and Sweet Water Board who holds the permit, right?
Yes, it's for all, yeah, we're the friendly.
Yeah.
How many? Let's see. How many catch basins do we have in the city? I guess it's
72,000.
72,000.
I don't have any more questions.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present.
No, thanks for presenting. So, we appreciate your time. We're expecting to present the plan at the September 12th City Planning Commission hearing. The report will be made public the week before that. So.
Great.